welcome to Weird Heat. I'm Brian Altano, and this is Max Scoville. And today we're talking about anxiety.
What the hell's that?
Oh, man.
What do you think anxiety is?
Well, so I feel like the easiest way to sort of quantify it is that it is a prolonged apprehension before, during, or after an event. And it's something that sort of sustains itself like a hum. I've always described anxiety to me as it's that horn sound they play at the beginning of House of Pains Jump Around, but like if it lasted forever, that like, but the beat never drops. Yeah.
Yeah, so we've talked about stress, and we've talked about fear, but I feel like we haven't. I feel like the anxiety is definitely, it shares some traits with both of those sort of things.
It's bed buddies with those two wretched beasts.
I think that anxiety is fundamentally horseshit. Like, I think that anxiety is, like, by definition, fucking wrong. Like,
you mean? Oh, so you don't?
I think anxiety.
Not saying you don't believe it exists.
We talked about this where, like, well, you know, fear is like false entities appearing real. A quote that I accredited to Gary Busey, but apparently that was what's that, Tony Robbins guy or something?
Yeah, people get those confused.
Yeah, I can see they both have huge teeth, but
they look like wax sculptures of themselves.
They're frightening nightmare men who will induce anxiety in both cases.
Yep.
But no, I feel like anxiety, especially when it's sort of generalized anxiety disorder, is almost like you're getting signals that are just it's like a false alarm.
Yeah,
like it's when it's something's tripping you up that shouldn't. Like, it's by definition, and I don't know, you know, obviously where this isn't a show about definitions or actual clinical diagnosis, but right. I feel like you can have, I think when I think like anxiety is, it's like having a haunted house in your brain.
Yes. Yeah. And so okay, so to clarify, you believe in it. You think it's bullshit.
Yeah, no, I don't.
It's not bullshit.
I think that
like,
it's, yeah.
You know, like a hoax.
Like the difference between a haunted house, if you've got poltergeists or whatever, it's a bunch of shit that's not really there, that is there, but it's fucking with your shit and it's ruining things. And obviously if like you think there's ghosts there, they're going to knock shit over. But it's different from having burglars in the house who are going to kill you.
Yes. I think that's a good way of putting it. I'm sort of apprehensive to talk about anxiety. In fact, I was anxious about this episode for one specific reason. We've done a lot of shows here about various themes and topics. This is one of the only ones that we've covered so far that is also sort of a kind of a psychological or medical description of an actual sort of psychosis or thing that people suffer from.
Yeah.
Like, this is one of those ones that, you know, some people have anxiety, and I have anxiety like in a way where I get nervous before certain things. We'll get into some examples in a little bit, but I don't have it on the level that, you know, someone who is clinically diagnosed as having anxiety has it.
Right.
In the same way, like you and I could talk about depression. Maybe that's something that kicks in all the time. But
someone's always got it worse. Someone's always worse off. And obviously, like I think in the grand scheme of things, like we probably, I don't know, we probably seem like we're not too anxious about stuff because we get out in front of, like some people get anxious about getting in front of a camera or talking when there's a microphone pointed at them, and we do that for a living.
Which, by the way, we still get tremendously anxious about.
Oh God, it's awful.
Yeah,
it's horrible.
I mean, I sleep terribly during any major event. I think like the best compliments we get is you guys make it look easy, and I don't think people really understand that there's like thousands of spiders fighting inside us during moments like that. Like, it's not.
Yeah, no, like I literally like everyone. I think everyone on some level has that thing at night that keeps them up, and it's that sort of anxiety about like, why did I say that stupid thing? Like, why did I say that? And we can do a whole other episode about insomnia sometime when we can't sleep. We can just call each other on the phone and just record that. That'd be a good one. But I think that there's that thing that keeps you up, and it's like, why did I say that dumb thing? And for most people, that's like, I don't know, you know, the guy at the movie theater says like, enjoy the show, and you're like, you too. And he's not going to see the movie, you idiot. Why would you say that, you dummy? I don't know.
Or the taxi at the airplane at the airport where he goes, have a safe flight. And you're like, you too. And he's like, this is a car.
Yeah, like I kick myself for like shit I said to Ryan Reynolds, you know? I'm like, what? Oh, that was embarrassing. I'm anxious about that, you know? But but back to sort of anxiety and stuff. I am like diagnosed with anxiety shit when I was at a very young age. I missed a lot of school growing up because I just couldn't hack it. Like, I would shut down.
So what does that mean exactly? Like, you would shut down in class, or you couldn't even make it to school, or both?
Both. I mean, it was the kind of thing where I would just like I couldn't get out of bed, and it's like if I would have probably been. I don't even know exactly what it was. It was just like it was generalized anxiety. It was coupled with a lot of really horrible depression.
Were you just kind of paralyzed, like? Because I think there's a sort of there's a notion for people who don't truly understand that to like, grab yourself by the bootstraps or get up, get over it, or just don't.
It's very easy to look at it and be like, well, just do it.
Yeah.
But imagine if you were in fucking upside down nonsense world and that was impossible.
Or it's kind of like picture yourself jumping out of a plane.
I think that's actually of like a fair thing. Like, so I went on vacation a few years ago. We found this like this place. It was in like Hawaii at this beach, and they had this big like rocky outcropping that was like, I think it might have been like 15 or 20 feet up. Like it wasn't super high. It wasn't like cliff jumping or anything, but it was like, yeah, we're going to jump off. That looks like a fun as hell time. And then the second you got up there, your body was like, excuse me, what the fuck are you doing?
Right.
Like, this is not a safe thing to be doing with your time. And you get this, like, I was suddenly like, maybe I don't want to do this. Maybe like there's some part of me that's, fighting against this. And being in the throes of a full blown, anxiety attack is, I would say, akin to that, where your body is reacting in this like guttural, primal kind of fight or flight, primarily flight, almost like shut down kind of deer in headlights sensation. Mm-hmm. And maybe on some level, it's not justified, or maybe your brain is kind of drinking the Kool-Aid, so to speak, and you're like, this is a real threat. Like, I have identified the scenario I'm in as a genuine, real situation. And, to anybody who's standing there being like, maybe they're sitting 30 feet away and they're like, that's not that high. Just jump, just take do the thing. And obviously I didn't have a panic attack on vacation while cliff jumping in Hawaii, but like,
Did you jump?
Yeah, I jumped. It was fine.
Good.
Yeah, I got water up my ass. It was awful.
Really?
Yeah. I don't know how I landed. It was weird.
I've actually never heard of anyone doing it.
I like hit the water at a very strange angle and went right up my shorts and in my ass.
Really?
Yeah, it was strange.
That's why that Michael Phelps guy hits bongs to get the gravity going.
I don't think that's true at all.
Yeah, he does it to get high. No, so that's fascinating, because I think it's like you could look at that as a scenario where on the ground it feels like you can do it, and then you get up there and then you can't, and that's not necessarily kind of like I'll put it this way: like, I was pretty anxious about officiating your wedding, and then I went through these almost bipolar bouts of like sheer terror and don't worry, you're going to knock this out the park. And I was super worried up until the second it was happening. Mm-hmm. And then it's also like in a situation like that, you look around to the people in your life that can help you get through something like that. And I turned around to you, who was equally terrified because you're about to get married. Yeah. So it's like my support group is collapsing too, for his own reasons, obviously.
I think that also that's probably why they serve booze at weddings. You know, it's kind of to grease the wheels and loosen up and everything.
There's also
I had a weird thing at my wedding, because going into that, I completely had I forget if we've talked about this or not. I had all the jitters kind of like steamrolled out of me, because I went the weekend before my wedding was Comic-Con.
Yep.
And like, I don't know. I think that when I think of sort of like the most stressful parts of my summer and the things that I'm like that were most harrowing on like a kind of anxiety level, it was probably interviewing the cast of Aquaman, mm-hmm. And then it was like, and a week later I had to get married, but that was pretty cool actually.
Yeah.
It was all fun. Everything worked out fine in both cases, but like,
I think with that too, it's sheer terror, and then there's this like gigantic release, and you're free, and you can party and drink and dance and stuff like that.
Yeah,
which you don't really get in a lot of scenarios. Like you talked about, or you tell me a lot about how you have seasonal depression, and I think I have seasonal anxiety. I realize that every August when I start to hear I start to sort of smell back to school.
Oh yeah,
like it's that new Mead notebook smell. It's binders. It's also I worked at Staples in high school and a little bit in college, and it was like the kind of thing where I not only did I hate back to school because I hated school, but the idea of it terrified me. Being around school supplies, hearing the words back to school, being in grocery stores where I'm there to like buy like food or alcohol or snacks, and seeing back to school creep its way in the middle of the summer was this realization that this sort of safe space of summer where things are wonderful and you don't have to worry about stress, was evaporating in favor of school returning. I have now been out of school for almost 2 decades.
Right,
you know?
right.
I've been out of college for like 15 years, basically.
It's been a minute.
It's been a while. It still hits me.
That's because you were conditioned.
Yes.
That's because like that is the thing is when you're a child, you are learning patterns and your brain is being formed to sort of adhere to things, and that's why the idea is that school teaches you how to do shit that you're going to do for the rest of your life. They give you, an assignment book, they give you homework, and that's in theory preparing you for doing stuff for the rest of your life. And they try to mix it up, and maybe it doesn't. Who knows what you wind up doing for a living? Maybe it resembles school, maybe it doesn't.
Right. It's very bizarre because it still haunts me, and it makes me think like, why does that haunt me? And it was like, oh, because that school crystallizes all the worst parts of my anxiety. There's the fear of failing in front of an entire class and getting nervous about that. There's nervous about being late. There's like being bullied by kids who are bigger than me and shit like that. And so I've been out of school for 15 years and I quit smoking 6 years ago. And to this day, the dreams that haunt me the most are the ones where I'm either smoking a cigarette or I'm late for a class that doesn't exist. Now, I don't smoke and I don't go to school anymore, but they're saying something very fucked up about this universe that those two things haunt me the most.
The fact that it is a cliche to have that nightmare where you're naked in school and you have to do a test, like maybe that's an indication that how we approach education in this day and age is a little bit off, a little bit wonky.
Yeah.
The fact that, I don't know, the term school shooting is a thing is like, that's... But why? Like that's another conversation entirely. But like, I don't know. Thinking back on it, on the one hand, I'm in hindsight, I think back to like getting anxious about school and about shutting down and not being able to hack it and just being like, I can't do that. That is a thing that will pretty much kill me if I go to school. And being like, what was wrong with me? Why couldn't I just do it, And it was like, because there was shit was wrong with my brain, things weren't going the way they should have been. And it's easy in hindsight to be like, I wish I just sort of handled things differently and just really just done it better. And if you were to sort of, send me back in time in my own brain or whatever to do that over again, there's no telling if, knowing what I know now, that I'd do any better, or if school really was bad as I remembered and I've just blocked out parts of it or whatever. But yeah, I mean, it's a place that you go and you have to, it should be fun. School should be good. It's a place where you go to learn stuff. That sounds kind of cool when you put it that way.
Yeah, and like there's people like similarly minded to you, and they're all going through the same shit. And like if you're tired after an hour, like they something else starts talking. Like
you only have to do it like it's over at 3.
Yep,
and then you only have to do it like in the not summer years. In the summer, you go and you play at the pool or whatever.
Yeah, which is like, obviously brings in different levels of anxiety.
And you go to real life, and like you don't have a different subject every hour. You don't necessarily have a break for lunch, and you sure as shit probably aren't done at 3 p.m. And you do not get like 3 months off in the middle of the year when it's nice out to go play at the pool.
Yeah, and it's
unless you're a teacher, in which case you probably got a lesson plan or
Yeah, whatever. I mean, it's like pretty fucked up that it still echoes as something so like deeply traumatic to me, and I think for other people too, because I think we say a lot on a lot of our shows, like high school is not everything. It's just a small self-contained bubble that you will eventually get out of, and whoever is the king of that bubble really has no powers in the real world. Like popularity means nothing, etc. But there is still a haunting to that, in the same way Ozzy Osbourne said the hardest drug to quit was cigarettes. Like it just kind of sits and simmers for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
But
so anxiety.
Yeah.
What aside from like doing public speaking stuff or interviewing people or whatever, what gives you anxiety?
Well, I would say like sort of like large crowds here and there, like conventions do fuck me up on a certain level. Disappointing people really gets to me. Like the idea of like saying something or doing something that hurt somebody, which is tough to do because I do a lot of very like comedy driven things, and that's always a dangerous line to walk because I'm afraid I'm gonna get under someone's skin. If I say something stupid in a show and it's there and it's waiting to be found by others, and I know they're going to interact with it the wrong way, or like I fuck up something on a Friday and then I go home for the weekend and then work comes Monday and I'm thinking about it all weekend. Stuff like that gives me anxiety,
That sounds about kind of par for the course.
Yeah.
The not letting people down thing is another one. I like last night I was about to go to bed and my wife goes, like, she's on Facebook and she's like, what's so and so up to? And I was just like, fuck, he's working in PR. I forgot to reply to an email from him.
Yep.
And I was like, oh shit, that's a friend of mine. Like I should have, and then it was immediately like, there's an email I didn't answer. That's a homework assignment I didn't turn in.
Yeah.
That's a friend I let down, and
Yep.
and it fucked me up. And I was tossing and turning for a while over that. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I think that one of my and this sort of ties into the sort of insomnia thing. Something that really I think helps with that is just writing a list of the shit that's bouncing around inside your head, like the stuff that is making you like fret and get anxious.
Yeah.
Those like late night things. Physically write it down. Like put it on a piece of paper and just write that shit down as like either a to-do list or like just to kind of, it's almost like pull it out of your head and put it on the piece of paper, and then it'll stay on the piece of paper and leave you alone until you look at it the next day. It's like,
Right.
It's almost kind of backing it up.
No, I respect the hell out of that. I think even if you don't cross off everything on that list, just having it there gets it out of you, instead of just flickering around. I always look at problems, or try to look at problems as a vertical stack, rather than a pile, because it's harder to parse.
Now, you talked about like getting anxious in crowds of people or in like just, talking to people on some level. Obviously, like social interaction is not effortless.
No.
Like I think there's an assumption that it's normal to be good at it, or that there's like sort of like a passing level of like, and again, this is stuff that school sort of imparts on you, that like you should be normal on some level, but like social interaction requires a certain type of energy and a certain type of like focus, and you're putting yourself out there, and a lot of people have a really hard time doing that and like putting that out there, and there's that feeling of that, there's that anxiety of like, am I a big idiot? Am I fucking everything up? Am I making this weird? Am I making this awkward? And in reality, I think most people are thinking that on some level, and the ones who aren't, the ones who come across as really confident, are kind of stupid and don't know any better.
I totally agree. I mean, there's and a lot of that gets confused as confidence,
right?
Which is funny. Like there's a lot of like bravado and idiocy that gets championed as confidence, whereas sometimes it's okay to not say anything, but you do get scared. Like I got major anxiety growing up from playing sports, because it was doing something I hated and didn't know much about, that I had to do in front of large crowds of people, which is, very different than my job now, which is doing something I love and I consider myself, an expert on, that I have to do in front of large crowds of people. So there's still the notion of letting people down, but I know that when I do now, it's coming from a place that at least started with confidence. Whereas when I was a little kid, they put me in a baseball league in 4th grade. And like, there's this picture of me in 4th grade. I looked like a stick figure. I was like the skinniest, tiniest little kid. Like people look at me from a couple years ago when I was like fatter, and then I lost weight now, and they're like, put some weight on, skinny boy or whatever. And it's like, I was skinny for a very long time, scrawny. You don't develop my fucking scrappy fuck you personality when you're like tall and jacked, or even really that fat. It's when you're a little pipsqueak, you start getting that small man syndrome. So they put me on this baseball team in 4th grade that had 5th graders, and I swear 6th graders, as pitchers. Like they just got the biggest kids. Like these fucking beast kids were all pitchers, and these kids were throwing.
What the fuck?
It was terrifying, and these kids were throwing like 90-mile-an-hour fastballs and all this shit. And I was like these Nolan Ryan motherfuckers, and they just put me out there, and we had. First of all, our team color was orange, so I had to wear these tight gray pants, this fucking bright orange shirt and hat.
You just look like you're in jail.
Yeah, and I was just this tiny little kid, hated baseball, didn't understand it. It was one of those things that like really, my dad was really into it. He loved baseball and he tried to push it on me, his oldest son, and learned pretty early on that I wasn't really there for it. And so they would put me up there, and these kids would pitch these fastballs at me so fast that it would terrify me. And I played for a full season, and I did not swing. I didn't swing at one fucking pitch.
Wow.
Not one. And like They didn't want to put me out there. I didn't want to be out there. I was terrified. I was a little kid, and I was so fucking anxious of getting hit or beamed, but also like that's what happens to you when you don't swing at shit and you stand there. Like you either get walked, you get struck out without moving, or you get beamed. Those are your three options. And if you get beamed in the side of the head, like it's not great. And I had a friend on the team.
I love how you were playing like pacifist baseball.
Yeah.
Like a conscientious objector.
I just stood there and I froze. I was a fucking deer in headlights for a full year. And I've never been more scared about anything in my entire life. And it gave me anxiety thinking about it. Like when seeing baseball diamonds as a kid, I would get anxious, like hearing like the crack of the bat, I'd get anxious. Now I don't care. It's like whatever.
I repeated senior year because I didn't have enough PE credits because gym class gave me so much anxiety that I kept putting it off.
Were you one of those guys that forgot gym clothes and shit like that?
I was one of those guys who, let's see, I think at the beginning of senior year, my guidance counselor was like, all right, so to graduate, you're going to have to do, what is it like? It was like 4 semesters. It was like 3 semesters worth of PE in 1 year. Mm-hmm. So I was like, I don't really want to go to like one of these semesters. I'm going to have to take two gym classes, and like I'd already tried to like do like extra credit somewhere else or make it up, but like it was a mixture of I was fat, I was like out of shape, and I was really uncomfortable with my body, and I hated the thought of like changing in front of people. I also hated the idea of physical activity. And then there's the fact that it's sports, like at no point are they like, what are you into? And I would have been like, I don't know. I would have been like, I don't know. I like anime. They're like, all right, we're going to have you carry rocks like Goku. Like we're going to have you do like bullshit anime training and teach you the fundamentals of like exercise. I would have been like, hey, this is a like, what do you, a fucking course I could get behind. This makes sense. But instead they're like, all right, we're doing, we're doing flag football, and then we're doing, run the mile, and it's like
why is it that people like you and me that grew up really into like art and books and science fiction and shit like that, we get massive anxiety from gym class, but people that grew up into like gym class didn't get anxiety from art class? Like they would just kind of fuck around and draw a boat and leave, not really think about it. You don't.
Dude,
really
there was a kid in my grade. Fuck this guy for like this guy was. I think he was like the assistant captain of the wrestling team or something. He's the first person I ever saw with like a cauliflower ear. He was on like 3 of the sports teams. He was a fucking like half a valedictorian or whatever the fuck it was. One of those guys who was doing. He was like this fucking. He was that asshole that turquoise dude from Doug, not Skeeter, but the fucking stinky pinker winker bean or whatever the fuck is chalky. That was it. And he was just this straight A jock, and then on top of that, he was a fucking gifted painter.
God damn it.
And he won some like art contest in senior year where I was like, of course I made some like weird bullshit that honestly like shouldn't have won, but I was like, yeah, I'm an art guy. This is my forte. And he fucking walks in with this watercolor he did of a photo of him surfing. Like he took like a vacation photo from him surfing, and he's like, yeah, I painted this with watercolors. And I'm like, that's a great photograph. You really got the waves right. It's very good. And I was just like, just let anyone else have something.
Yeah,
and,
right? Fuck these dudes with all the fucking skill trees maxed out.
Oh, yeah, and he was fucking nice, too. Like, he wasn't even an asshole. It was just one of those ones where you're like, fuck you,
you're like, I can't
dude.
even be mad at you.
Yeah. But no, like, I don't know. I think that, I don't know, the artsy fartsy shit is like, there's so much wiggle room for doing that. I know some people who don't, they don't draw because they're like, I don't know how to draw. And it's like, have you seen art? A lot of it sucks. Yeah. Just give it a shot.
It's true.
What could go wrong,
It's true. It's also the thing about art is that you don't really have to do it in front of like 40 people in the middle of a field on a summer day wearing shorts.
Like I still am anxious about working out in front of people or exercising in any kind of like public capacity. Like part of it, I don't like the clothes that you wear when you exercise. You know? Like I don't even wear like
that. Took me a long time to get over. I go to the gym frequently now, but I go to a same gym that I went to a couple years ago. And when I went there a couple years ago, there were people like, I think I've told you this story. They were like exercising on the walls and ceiling pipes and shit. Like they were this one guy, this fucking Abobo double dragon motherfucker, jumped like 9 feet in the air, grabbed the fucking exposed column, a support beam, and just started. He did like 200,000 pull-ups, and I was just like, fuck this place. And I didn't know how to use any of the equipment, so I just kind of like poked around and then like got scared, and then I left, and I think I ran like a mile and then came home just so I would be sweaty. And my wife was like, how was the gym? And I was like, it was great. And then I never went again. And then like 2 years later, I was like, I'll give it another shot and I'll talk to a trainer and I'll go in there. And that's a terrifying place.
I think part of that anxiety is this fear of failure. Like you're like, I will look. And there's also embarrassment. You're like, I will look stupid if I don't know what I'm doing in there. But then there's also the sort of fear of asking for help. And that's something that everyone is typically really bad at. You know, there's a thing where like if you ask for help, you're weak or you're less or you're somehow inferior, when in reality that's how learning happens. That's how information is sort of imparted on people. That's how society would work.
You and I are like an interesting tag team of expert procrastinators that somehow get it done, but a lot of times we are procrastinating, and I wonder how much of that is based on like, I don't want to send this email, or I don't want to do this thing, or like, you know, I don't want to go to this doctor, or whatever it is. Like there's a lot of little things that like, you're like, maybe I should get this looked at, or they told me I should get it looked at, and you just wait and wait and wait until it's like, you know, you have this fucking thing on your head that's 3 feet tall. Whatever it is.
Yeah. No, I don't know. Like, fucking hell. Like, procrastination was the thing that I love this. We're recording this episode on September 7th. This is going to go up on September 9th, 11th. Yeah, I don't know. I feel weird saying September 11th, but here we are. But it's going to go up on the Monday. It's Friday right now. It's going to go up on Monday. We were talking yesterday. I think we were actually going to record yesterday morning, but then I was late. And so I was like, when should we record this? Let's do this on Friday. And I was like, what topic should we do? And I was like, what about procrastination? And you go, yeah, I don't know if I can make a song about procrastination in 3 days. It's like, I don't know, do it Sunday night, dude. Like, put it off. And instead we're doing anxiety.
That would actually be really funny if I did a song on procrastination at like 10:30 on Sunday night, and I went up late. I don't know, we're definitely deviating from the set topic of anxiety, but like on the subject of procrastination and on making things and on being afraid to fail. One of my favorite concepts, period, is in painting. There's a thing called alla prima, which is when you paint something in one go, in one sitting. Yeah, it's very much akin to sort of like how, you know, in the life drawing class, you got 3 hours. Here's the model, pose, and you have this thing in front of you, this fleeting moment of something you're supposed to work on. In the painting version, it's like, knock out the painting. You're doing this in one sitting. You are not coming back to this canvas to perfect it and massage it and sort of, you know, fiddle with it. And there's something incredibly freeing about that very, very harsh deadline. Yeah. Like to have that gun to your head, to have that, like, you've got this much time, go. And it's kind of like the limitation, I think, actually like is sort of is freeing. Yes, and it totally is.
It's the same thing I like about cooking, and it's the same thing I like about
podcasting. Really, that's a big part of it.
There. Yeah. I mean, it's especially the way we podcast. I don't know if you've heard some of the other shit out there, but it's
the like, real pros. Yeah, we're not.
I don't know
really.
If you listened to like not Serial. What was the other one? Shittown. Shittown was good.
Yeah,
and I'll listen to good podcasts that my wife listens to, and I'm like, God damn it.
Yeah, right.
Like I was. Like,
yeah, really professional.
We've been doing this for a while.
We're on a street corner with like 6 cans, and we're like, we made a song.
One of these days, we will record in the street, and it'll be great. But
That's true.
I mean, you know, it's there's that. It's this kind of like jazzy, like give it, just do it, just get out there, make the thing, just ship it.
Let me ask you, when you were diagnosed with anxiety, was that a conversation that like your sort of parents, teachers, guidance counselors, senior superiors were like, hey, you should go talk to somebody? Or like, was that in the sort of rat's nest of other things that they were?
It was kind of depression at first. So what happened was in 5th grade, we sort of started. It was like I went to like a K through 8 school because it was a really small town, and it was the beginning of middle school effectively. So it was like, this is the part where you've got to go between classrooms. You don't just have like the one, Charlie Brown homeroom teacher who's going to like bring you all your courses. It was like you have to go and fight these different fucking Zelda bosses throughout the school. And at the same time, everyone's starting to get these kind of like, beginnings of puberty, and everyone's, some kids are suddenly really mean, and the girls are
huge.
People start caring about like clothes and stuff. And then on top of that, I had to move, and I also broke my arm, and my cat ran away, and my uncle died. And that was really the big one, is that this whole just sort of shitstorm happened all at once. And of course, I was miserable from one thing, so I would kind of lump all the negative things together. And probably bottom line was I was just depressed the whole time.
Yeah.
And I think that kind of just, the sort of grief kind of congealed into like a very dark winter. This was like 1996 or so. And I kind of came out of it, and I was like, I just started missing a lot of school. Like I would just, my mom would be like, hey, it's time to get up. And she's, single parent. So it's not like, dad's going to drive, someone's going to drive me to school. It was like either my mom drove me to school or I could catch the school bus, or like nothing happens, and she had to kind of handle it, and I was just like,
it's also easier to win over one parent than two when you're trying to weasel your way out of some shit.
That's true.
Like that was we always had that, like, oh, mom said no, ask dad, dad said no, ask mom type of situation. Like you had two angles to work.
No, and I mean, I think about that, and like, kind of knowing my dad now, like he probably would have kicked me in the ass a little bit harder, and I think that might have been good. Like I think part of the reason that some of these sort of patterns formed, and like I'm not saying that, like, again, I had fucking crippling depression and horrible anxiety, but like how much of that was sort of like letting it become like a kind of clear and present danger, rather than like actually, like, had I gone to school and just sort of gotten over it and found some small part of school to hang on to like really to tolerate that. But like, I don't know, it fucked me up. And like I remember like, I was just missing a lot of school, and it's weird. It was the kind of thing where it wasn't like, it was like clearly like I don't think my mom was like, yeah, he's faking sick. It was like, shit, this is getting bad. And it kept getting worse. And like there was like self-harm involved, and there was like and I mean, I think you could sort of boil it down to be like, man, you really didn't want to go to school. And it's like, maybe yeah, but on such a fucking deep, like primordial guttural level that like I could not go to school, and it was, I think it became a worse problem. Like they started putting me on a bunch of medication to help with depression and anxiety, and that made me incredibly sleepy and put on a ton of weight. And also, the more you're gone from school, the more noticeable your absence is. And then when you come back, everyone kind of treats you a little bit differently, because it was like, the fuck's up with you?
Well, it's also sort of like when you're playing a rhythm game like Guitar Hero or something, and you miss a note, you miss the next 20, and it's really hard to get back on the lane.
Yeah, and if you're already kind of down on yourself for being a fuck up, then when there's sort of like new fuck ups to point out, you start to lump them together. You start to find patterns in your own failures. And I don't know what makes me think of this. It's funny, we talk about the kid in my senior year class who was like the athlete and the artist and just the nice guy and everything. That happened to a classmate of mine, and I was like, my class was like 25 kids in the whole school. Like grade 7 was that many kids. It wasn't a big school at all, so everyone knew each other really well. And I was always sort of the new kid. Like I was kind of a weirdo, and like I didn't really fit in, never really did. And so for me to be like kind of a fuck up and miss a bunch of school, everyone was like, par for the course, I guess. Single mom, shit seems kind of weird over there. But then this friend of mine who like was always like, seemed like he had his shit together, seemed great. He had like a complete fucking nervous shutdown, and he straight up fucking couldn't walk. Jeez. Like he showed up at school in a wheelchair, and everyone's like, did you fucking hurt your legs or something? And it was one of those like psychosomatic, like his parents apparently just drove him super fucking hard. And the reason he was so good at everything was that he was like, oh, well, I don't have the option to fail. Whereas conversely, I was like, oh, I guess I do have the option to fail. And man, that I sure am failing a lot,
Right.
But he just on some level was like his shit stopped working. And, I think he sorted it out. He got medicated or whatever. And I mean, so did I, but, yeah, it's weird to think back on that. And again, like, we were children, you know, like we
Yeah.
didn't have any like. We didn't have the coping mechanisms you pick up over the years to like, you know, and also identifying these feelings.
I think it's now, especially now, it's something that's talked about more. Even in the in the 80s and 90s and 2000s, it was still sort of trickling out there. I don't think people really knew how to identify it. So I guess like if someone feels that this is something they're battling now, what do you think they should do? Like, what should be their first steps?
Learn about it, you know, educate yourself. And obviously, you know, I know a lot of people who suffer from serious anxiety and serious depression. And I think for a lot of them, it's things that they discovered later in life or that kind of crept up on them. And I feel like sort of this, there's a Blue Oyster Cult song. It's from the heavy metal soundtrack. It's called Veteran of the Psychic Wars. And it's fucking written by fantasy author Michael Moorcock about Elric of Milneben, one of his fantasy characters. It's like the nerdiest fucking song ever.
Right.
It is not about emotional like health at all. I like that term, Veteran of the Psychic Wars. Like I feel like I've picked up some fucking battle damage along the way.
Yeah.
And it's one area that I'm like, you know what? When I'm down, I'm down, but I also recognize that that's where I am, and I'm pretty good at being like my own kind of canary in the coal mine. But I think if you're suffering from this kind of shit, if you're feeling like horrible anxiety, like educate yourself, like look it up and dig into it and try to understand it. And also, one thing that will totally fuck a person up is a diagnosis. A diagnosis is not a clear-cut classification of you as a person.
Right.
It is a thing they put. It primarily exists for the sake of record keeping. Mm-hmm. Like there's this thing called the DSM-4, which is like the Diagnostic Science Medicine. I don't know what it stands for at all. But it's like this giant thick book that's basically all of the mental health disorders, every possible crazy diagnosis that could be in there, and it's constantly being updated. It's not like a book anymore because we have the internet now. But basically, it exists to give kind of sort of measurements for what, you know, everything exists on a spectrum, like anxiety disorders, depression, autism, clearly, any disorder or illness or ailment or whatever. It's all infinitely granular because we are entire fucking microcosms. So to try to just slap a label on something and be like, you have bipolar number 2, you
Right.
have depression, but only in the wintertime. You know, it's like that is way too fucking rudimentary for like something like emotions, which are also,
I was going to ask you about that. Yeah.
They also exist. Like looking back on my situation growing up, like my life kind of sucked. Like things weren't great. You know,
Mm-hmm.
it wasn't a good scenario. It's very possible I had crippling depression and anxiety because I was an only child in a single parent home in a fucking incredibly rural town. And we were unhappy. You know,
Yeah.
It was an unhappy time. And like,
Yeah.
it's impossible to separate that from what was going on in my own head.
No,
so
it's
like,
not. And so that's what I was gonna add too. Like on top of that, I think that if you get a diagnosis, it has a tendency to become a tattoo for some people and almost become a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah,
where,
totally.
Yeah, where all of a sudden they are just like, this is what I am. I am this
Yeah.
thing, and there's not like wiggle room around
it's
it.
like a
you're
scarlet
escaping
letter.
it.
You're like,
yeah.
oh, you've been branded. You're, you know.
Which I don't find necessarily fair because it's sort of like, it becomes this stamp now where you have to carry this weight for the rest of your life.
Mm-hmm.
And there's ways around, ways to combat that. B, there's second opinions. C, it doesn't necessarily have to define you and the characteristics of you as a person. And on the flip side, I think that if you only experience this in mild degrees or milder degrees than someone who has sort of full blown anxiety, someone like me who gets it in spikes, it's also worth talking about because just because you don't have it as bad as somebody else doesn't mean you don't have it at all.
That's the other thing is just talk to people.
Yeah.
And I realize for somebody who's got, crippling social anxiety and maybe is afraid of talking to other people or panics when they're put in a position to do so, that's the worst advice. But I think that if anything, just get it out of your head. Like these things kind of congeal and coagulate when they're cooped up in your own brain. So maybe write about it. Like journaling is a good thing.
I tweeted about that recently because for clarity, we had a situation at our jobs where somebody was ousted for plagiarism, and I naively assumed that it was a one-off situation, and that one-off situation stemmed from somebody who was drowning, overwhelmed in work, and couldn't ask for help. So my impetus behind my message was good, even if it turned out that the reality of it was false. But what I said was, if you are, buried at work or drowning and you need help or something like that, don't hesitate to ask. I know there's this massive stigma these days to not talk about these things and not reach out for help. And, I had the usual small batch of people saying like, I can't, or I couldn't, or blah, blah, blah. But better than that is I had a large group of people who said, thank you for saying this. I asked my boss for help, and now he's going to make this project easier for me. And this is something that was obviously a tremendous thorn in somebody's side, something that caused them a lot of anxiety. And sort of just maybe sometimes just saying like, hey, help me with this.
My favorite response you got to that was this big burly dude from I'm in the metal workers union, or I'm in the steel foundry union or something, and we are all about asking for help.
Yeah.
Because if you don't ask for help and you fuck up, you could kill people.
Yeah.
It was one of those things where you're like, oh, you just made that should be what a support system is about, is understanding that everyone is better if everyone's operating at their optimum efficiency. And if one person is overloaded and 7 people don't know about it, then those 7 people who depend on that one person are putting themselves in a bad situation,
Yeah. And no pressure, but I do think that we are this, and this sounds hippy dippy, but we are a sort of massively interconnected ecosystem of beings. And I think when one of them is down or hurt, and the others don't know, and they're sort of like somebody's kind of limping along, and they can't help you because they don't know that you need help. It puts everybody in a situation where, everyone in retrospect always says like, if I had known, I would have helped you, and they will. And so I think that, more and more of these conversations are important. I think that even if you deal with, back to school anxiety, like I deal with, or, you deal with something that's like seasonal, or you have this
sometimes it doesn't make any fucking sense.
Yeah, no, at all.
It could be like, I hate this room.
Well, that's the thing. Like you mentioned,
need to get out of here.
You mentioned the cliff diving thing. To me, that's like the cliff diving thing is hosting E3 or Comic-Con, which I've done 10 times now, or 20 times, 30 times. How many times we do a live show every single week together, sometimes multiple live shows. And there's still 1 out of every 20 times where I'll get tremendously anxious about an episode that we're going to do, or I unlearn everything that I thought I was great at. It's not necessarily something that you keep getting better at and it just goes away. Keep in mind that even with all the help in the world and all the care and everything you do, there's still that chance that you're going to have that fucking back to school nightmare, or you're going to have those pangs of fear in your side right before you're about to do something that you've done 1,000 times. And
if you're in a room full of people and you're terrified of talking to any of them, it's very possible that a lot of them are feeling the same way, and that they don't know who the fuck what to say to anyone. And that's how that goes. It's I don't know. We're all what's the expression? We're all just meat-covered skeletons hurling through space on a giant rock. We're
all dealing with some shit.
Yeah, it's all very upsetting. But no, on the subject of getting help and having conversations, if you don't have a physical person to have a conversation with, get on the internet, fuck around. There are a whole bunch of obviously message boards out there,
subreddits and stuff.
There are definitely some really awesome mental health subreddits where there are people who really give a shit, who will keep an eye on you, and people on Tumblr are usually pretty nice. Twitter, you might not want to fuck with. That one's a little bit wonky. Yahoo Answers is just that watering holes. Somebody poisoned that one a long time ago, so don't go in there. 4chan, I will speak no ill of. Facebook, I don't do that one. Really, honestly, just go on Reddit. Maybe go look at the not the bad ones, not the bad subreddits, just the nice ones.
Yeah. I mean, it would be my dream in this country and in this world to get to a point where these conversations are so normal that you can have them everywhere. But my belief behind it now is that anyone calling you, a pussy, beta, cuck, snowflake, or anything is also dealing with some shit of their own.
Oh, yeah.
And so for now, we can't. I will, and I think that this show's part of it. But I think I will forever strive to normalize these conversations because they're important.
You've gotten a lot. You've gotten good at that, man.
Thanks.
You've gotten very like there. There was a point in time where you were very much kind of like not macho, but very much like, what's the big deal about a lot of stuff?
Yes.
And I think part of the reason we do this show is to talk about some shit, some real stuff, and to kind of it can be. Well,
I think like most things, I made mistakes and then learned from them. Like I thought I remember talking to a friend who was dealing with like not only depression, but like severe violent tendencies, and nothing he acted on, but stuff that would just pop in his head. And he was like, I'll be in this normal situation and all of a sudden I'll have these awful dark thoughts about this. And I was like, just don't think about them. And he was like, it doesn't work like that. And I was like, oh, right. I'm a fucking idiot for even assuming that. Like, and that's stupid of me.
It's literally a Mad TV sketch.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like,
stop it.
Yeah. Just stop it. And it doesn't
I'm terrified
work like
of being
that.
buried alive in a box. Stop it, or I'll bury you alive in a box.
Yeah. So one thing that I didn't really talk about at all in this episode is I have my only tick that I have left is I bite my nails, and it sucks. And it's like they'll grow back. And like right before my daughter was born, I was feeling really confident, and they grew back. And then we took her to the doctor because she had like this little red bump on her eye that went away, and I was so terrified about it because waiting for the diagnosis and seeing what it was, I was like, is it cancer or is it anything? It turns out it was just like a pocket of like blood cells that burst through the stress of pregnancy, and I was so nervous that I bit my nails again. And like it's the one thing my wife will constantly like kind of smack me on the side of the head for while we're watching TV. She'll be like, stop biting your nails. And I'm like, oh yeah, you're right. I'll nervously just sort of like chew on them.
I used to bite my nails all the time. And I think it was mostly because I didn't like the feeling of nail clippers, which is really gross when I think about it. I don't do that anymore, but now I bite my lip. And the other day, I actually, my wife is a dentist, and I bit my lip so much that I'd managed to fucking clog a salivary gland.
Oh my God.
It's a thing called a mucus seal. I thought it was like mucus seal, but if you Google that, it just comes up with snotty like ocean animals. It's like, it's really gross. But no, it's a weird, like it's kind of mouth cyst thing.
Yep.
And she's like, come by my office. And so I went by her office, and she shot me in the fucking mouth with a laser and cut this thing open. So then I just like went home and was like, all numbed up and full of laser burns in my mouth. I was like, this is weird. I don't know how I feel about this. But yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
Nibbling on weird parts of your body is definitely one coping mechanism that plenty of people have.
For anxiety, yeah. That's
great.
That's not the best one. If it gets you through it, then sure. But
don't try not to do that.
Try not to do it.
Try not to. Yeah.
It's coming from two people who do it. We're working on it.
Get a fidget spinner. And try to chew on that.
Yeah. As you can see, this is very much not a show about two preachy, infallible people mansplaining shit to you. This is us kind of bearing it all and going like, hey, we're there too, man. I like
that we do this show.
Yeah,
man.
me too. Good. I think it's how at the very least it's good to get this stuff out there.
Hey, in like 13 days, do you want to do an episode on procrastination?
I think so. Yeah. Do you want to wait until like the last second?
I said 13 days, didn't I? But yeah, this is Weird Heat.
This is Weird Heat. Thank you so much for listening and watching, however you consume us. Tell your friends about the show. Get more people on there. We're really proud of it. And remember, you can subscribe on youtube.com/weirdheat. You can also get us on iTunes, everywhere you get your podcast.
We're on Spotify.
You can buy a shirt at weirdheat.com. But most importantly, we're on Patreon, and that's the best way to keep the lights on, or however we shoot the show.
Clearly, not enough people are
keep the lights dim
it's
in
very
here.
Dark show.
And support the show.
We're saving up for a color video camera.
That's one day. That's patreon.com/weirdheat. Go over there, kick us a buck. We like to put a lot of sort of like cool stuff behind the scenes there, little art projects we're working on, and songs, and early access to episodes and all that fun stuff. So yeah, I hope you know where to find us by now. But if not, I'm on Twitter at Agent Bizzle. Max is at Max Scoville. And this is Weird Heat. And
wait. If you're looking for someone to talk to, head over to our Facebook group.
Yes.
It's very nice. I think there's tops maybe 3 racist uncles in there. The rest of the people are very nice. That's just facebook.com/group/weirdheat. So jump on in there, and if you need to have like a little group therapy, I'm sure the people in there will be very nice to you.
It's true. That's Weird Heat, and that was Anxiety. And
coming up next, we got a hot top 40 jam from this up and coming producer, Brian Altano.